Okay, just because this is easier than typing it, I'm going to try and formulate a theory, almost mathematically. It's mathematical in the sense that, in the same sense as my theory that this is all infinite, simply because the true antithesis of nothing is not infinity. It is not everything. It is something. The real antithesis of nothing is something. Because nothing begets an absolute absence of anything. So for something to exist, it sort of completely eradicates the possibility of a true nothing. Like, there might be seemingly empty pockets, like space is a vacuum, but it's not nothing. You know, nothing as a concept cannot exist at the same time as anything, let alone everything. But without a nothing, that sort of precludes everything. That's more plausible than absolute, which I absolutely believe there's not a nothing, you know? Could get into how time itself is a weird thing simply because from our perspective of time, there's a beginning to everything, and for there to be anything, there can't really be a beginning. It's a constant. It's a thing. It's just a thing. It is. It exists. There is existence. I could tap on this right here. That's you know, going back to Descartes here type thing. Anyways, I've gone off track. The theory that I just came to mind more concretely than before, which I've espoused in my personal life, but the theory is sort of going against every alien invasion movie that we've ever seen, simply because it's hard for me to imagine an actually technologically superior hostile alien existence, something beyond us in every sense, you know, out there, and also out there, you know, technologically, because we've struggled to get to this point. And really what we're struggling against is hostility. There is the possibility, perhaps, that you have something like from Star Trek, like the and it would have to come out of an existing civilization almost, because it's not so much like the Klingons? No, not Klingons. Is that Klingons? Whatever fucking Worf? I haven't seen Next Generation in a while. Worf, whatever he is, they're very warlike, and that's a less plausible possibility to me than something like the Borg. Trying so many Star Trek analogies, I haven't even finished nearly the Next Generation, and that's the only one I've watched. But it's a great piece of sci-fi for imagining these sort of things and their potentialities. The Borg makes more sense, and within, it's closer to a Terminator type thing, where we create something that then goes beyond us. And if that becomes spacefaring, it will have the thing I'm talking about. To come back around, to kind of get myself out of a tangent. I'm bad with tangents. The only possibility I can see for a hostile alien civilization at large, you know, intergalactic, let alone galactic, let alone spanning their own solar system, which we have yet to, I mean, we've made, in as far as our imagination can go, we've made pitiful efforts so far. And again, we're largely held back by what I'm about to describe, which is that you would have to have a unified hostility. You would have to have a complete absence of what we know as tribalism or rivalry in an inter sense. And inter would almost become intra, and these would be extra. They would have to be extra hostile. in the very literal sense that they would have to be outwardly hostile towards anything but them. They would have to reach a point of unity that allows them to advance technologically. According to everything we can observe within our own histories, it's been a fucking painstaking scrape of a struggle towards unity, and it's hard to imagine. That's as far as I'll go in terms of certainty, but it's hard to imagine getting to that point of unity without overcoming that entirely. Unity is a concept much more ascribed to peace than war. And so for a unified species to be warlike, they would have to have completely skipped over, again, tribalism, racism, all these things that have made us warlike. Jealousy of, envy is a better word than jealousy. Jealousy is almost more romantic, but envy, rivalry, these sort of things. And again, it's been a toss. It's been a fucking back and forth, bouncing against the walls kind of struggle between competition and cooperation for us. So again, it's hard for me to imagine that any species that could reach a level beyond where we're at, because we're at a weird pressure point between potential existences going forward. For anything to get beyond us in this current moment, I mean, we're still really tense. I feel like they'd have to let go of that tension to have reached a point of true unity, of a real understanding of each other, not momentary, And so it just seems unlikely to me, very, very unlikely, that anything that would reach us before we reach them would be hostile, would be coming here. And again, this is the other possibility I can imagine, is that entropy is a more powerful force than we realize, and that kind of goes against what I view as the human miracle, which is that empirically we have less resources than ever before. No resource is truly infinite. It's all really ultimately finite resources. And maybe not. The sun is finite, but maybe, and this is perhaps silly, this is perhaps scientifically naive, but maybe water isn't, because every drop of water that's ever ingested or whatever is eventually, whether it takes mere excretion and evaporation or death, is eventually going to go somewhere. So maybe beyond the stuff like trapped in plastic bottles or whatever. But it's easy to burst a plastic bottle unless they're locking fucking water in adamantium safes and throwing it, burying it deep. What was I saying? Oh yeah, we've made more out of less, is what I was saying. That out of whatever we have, which we're constantly using, we've managed to do more. So unless that's an utterly naive concept, or if that's an utterly naive concept, I should say, then there is the possibility that species would unify in a sort of cynicism, and a sort of it'd be a sort of collective selfishness, self-preservation instinct expanded to any and all members of their species. They have a real compassion for each other, and that generates the unity, but they're struggling for resources. And so it becomes and it's hard to imagine that as well, just because I know how compassion feels. I know how empathy feels. I feel compassion for insects. And so it's hard to imagine that a species with such intense compassion for each other and their existence, such a lucid sort of empathy, that it would be something strict. It would be limited to just them, you know, that they wouldn't see a species on the way to being what they are, and rather than having the feeling of, hey guys, oh, here's what we've learned, maybe we can work together and figure this out. I'm happy to have found somebody, because I was getting real lonely out here. It was scary. Rather than that they would be like, give me your iron, I want your rare earth minerals, everything you have, methane, radiation, plastic, give it to us, consume, we need more, we are running out. You know, that's hard to parse for me. It seems like paradoxical and like opposite magnetizations. Well, I guess opposites attract, but you know what I mean, the homogeneous magnetizations that don't ever meet. If you've ever tried that as a kid, to press two magnets together that repel, it's an interesting sensation. And those concepts seem to me like that sensation in a way, where to care so much about yourself, I mean, you know, do they not have any other species on their planet? Do they not care at all about these species and their primitive natures? You know, assuming that life evolves in a similar way. You know, it's just hard to imagine.